I talked about guests. My first one is the formidable Sophie Corcoran. Hello.
Hello.
Good morning. How are you? It's been a while since we last saw each other.
I know, and we're in a lovely brand new studio. It's gorgeous in here, so I'm
great,
super
isn't it?
excited for this.
It's great.
They've done such a good job.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for being here. You're quite the formidable commentator, I think.
I should hope so.
No, you are. You're. I watch you from afar. I mean, I know we know each other. We've kind of been on a few shows in the past, but yes, I think you're very insightful and bold. You don't hold back.
Yeah, and I think the good thing is that I actually am a political activist on the bottom line. So I'm one of the few commentators that probably goes out knocking on doors every single week, running election campaigns or taking people to court. So I like to put my money where my mouth is a little bit.
Taking people to court. She says just as a little aside. Okay, well, you probably can't talk about that if it's a live court case. But can we just talk about this football thing? Because apparently you quite like football. I don't know if you realise, maybe from my intro, and those that are watching this will realise, I couldn't give two hoots about football. I think it's a load of overpaid prima donnas running around a field, not really caring about their country very much, almost head down, we've got to play for England, okay, we'll do that. Now, I know we won last night 4-2. If anyone thinks that now means, and I can almost hear it ringing in my ears from last night on the way, it's coming home.
It is definitely coming home.
It isn't coming home.
100% is coming home.
How stupid do you have to be to think it's coming home?
No, I think it's different this year. I think we watched the Croatia game yesterday and England started off absolutely terribly. I mean, it went to 2-2 at half-time. Jordan Pickford, don't know what he was doing. But I think that the half-time talk that Thomas Tuchel clearly had inspired them because we absolutely battered Croatia in the second half. And I think this is a big difference to Tuchel than what we had with Gareth Southgate. I think Gareth Southgate was essentially the HR department of football managers. Like when you think about someone that works...
A middle manager.
Yeah, when you think about someone that works in HR, Gareth Southgate is that. And that's basically who we had in charge. So there was no belief. There was... oh, well done, guys, like participationtrophy.com. Whereas with Thomas Tuchel, I do think it's different. I actually do think it's coming home because some of the top contenders have disgraced themselves so far. I mean, Spain drawing Cape Verde. I have never screamed at a television so much in my life for a 0-0 draw. I have never been so happy to see a 0-0 draw. And Portugal drew with Congo yesterday. So the heavy hitters are not doing themselves any favours, and we started off a bit ropey, but we absolutely battered Croatia in the second half. And Croatia are a really good team, so hopefully.
Well, they've scuppered us in previous World Cups. Apparently,
they have indeed
beaten us in semi-finals to stop us, bringing it home, so to speak. What do you think Thomas, whatever his name is, at half-time, did or said to revitalise the team?
I don't actually know, but whatever he did say clearly worked because they were much better in the second half, and that's kind of what we've done worse before. And he also was quite bold in some of the substitutions that he made. He took Rice off for Rodgers and things that Gareth Southgate just wouldn't have done. I mean, Gareth Southgate was really woke. He's, woke.com. And from what I've heard, that actually Thomas Tuchel did install a bit of patriotism in the side. I think from what we've seen reported, he basically said, be bold, be fierce, be English. Whereas I don't think Gareth Southgate would have ever gone that way. He was very woke, he was very HR-ified, he wasn't courageous, he didn't instill a sense of national pride into them because he thought that was offensive. Whereas Thomas Tuchel, a German by the way, has seemed to instill a different sense of national pride into our national team.
What happens if we face Germany in the final then?
That we'll sing 10 German bombers and we will have an absolute great time doing it.
But what happens if our coach is German? He's going to have rather split loyalties, isn't he?
Well,
who does he choose? That
he's
which
got to
pays
choose
him
England because
£4 million a year.
That's who pays him, surely. Yeah, I mean.
Do we think?
I'm up for national loyalty, but I think if I was in his shoes, I think I'd go for my pocket.
If Mark Littlewood is up yet, given that he might have a sore head, Mark Littlewood this morning, given that he would have been out in a bar watching and celebrating, and good luck to him. So if he's stirring in his bed in wherever he is at the moment, I think he should consider you as a pundit, Sophie, because who knew? I know you as a political commentator. I didn't know you as a football commentator.
Yeah,
You've educated me. Thank you.
I play football as well, actually. So I played football since I was 10 years old. I played in the Women's National League, which is like the third and fourth tier of women's football. So wow. I do play football quite a lot, actually. I still play about 3 or 4 times a week.
I feel at a huge disadvantage. Talking of disadvantages, let's talk about Makerfield. Yes. Have you been up there?
I actually haven't been to Makerfield, no, because I actually have a real job.
Conscientious objector.
Yes.
No, I know you have a job and you work weird and long hours. Let's talk about what we think is going to happen, because as I've said in the intro, we can talk about the fact that there is a Makerfield by-election. Other channels will not be able to have this conversation. We can, because we are not governed, because this is YouTube and it's not DAB, it's not broadcast output, we can talk about the Makerfield by-election without now having to say, oh, and by the way, here's a list of all the 37 candidates. So we are free to discuss this, as we should, because it's rather important, rather pivotal. Let me just tell you about the odds. So I think, I guess we can talk all day long about what we want to happen, Sophie, and what we think is going to happen. Those on the right will say, yeah, reform can do it and we need to. Those on the left will be saying, yeah, this is another reset number 73 for Labour if Burnham gets in and so on. But let's actually look at the odds. The betting odds, literally 10 minutes ago before we came on, I checked, Labour are 1-6 as the odds. So in other words, I guess what's that? Put £6 down to win a quid.
Nailed on.
Yeah, nailed on, literally. Yeah. Reform 5-1. So the odds are quite significantly different, even though the polls might suggest that there's maybe only a 3 or 4% difference between Labour and Reform. What do you think is going to happen?
I think the polls have been, throughout this, actually very generous to Reform. And I think that Burnham is nailed on to win. And I think that the gap is potentially going to be bigger than what they expected. Obviously, we've got this Restore Britain in play. They're really difficult to calculate in polls because they don't really have a lot of polling history. And also across the country, Reform are obviously polling extremely well. They're doing really well, but that doesn't mean that they're going to do well in a specific place. But the polls are often more in favour towards that, especially how well they did in the local elections. I don't think that they're potentially going to repeat the same result in the local elections. The question is, however, I don't think Reform are going to win, but is it a failure if they don't win?
Well, I did have this argument with Peter Barnes. I always argue with Peter Barnes, even though we're both supposed to be on the right. You too, right? It's not just me then, thank goodness for that. Well, and yes, he certainly lights up the comment section whenever he's on either Mike's show or this show. The fact is, this is not a blended vote in terms of taking multiple constituencies of different flavours and demographics and age and whatever, thereby being a true reflection of what the country thinks. This is a Manchester seat, which of course up until a few years ago, until Labour ruined themselves, would have been and had been for decades a Labour seat only. It died in the wall, salt of the earth, a northern Labour vote. So I think it's pretty preposterous to expect that Reform would just win it. But I guess because Reform have won red wall seats and have done very well in the likes of Wales, for instance, very traditional Labour, obviously we're in a position where Reform, it's almost kind of, the nation expects or the right expects. If Reform don't win it, it's a bit like Gorton and Denton. An incredibly Labour seat with a huge Muslim contingent who tend not to vote Reform, as it turns out. So I don't think it's a negative for Reform. But I think the question is, what happens to the right? What happens to the right? In fact, let's... what clip are we playing, Elena?
Well, a Makerfield one. The Lowy and Shepherds, but we can get to it. Not yet.
Yeah. Okay. So I've got play clip up on my screen, so I'm just doing as I'm told. But I think that was from earlier on. All right, let's get to clips later on, because this could be a very fascinating conversation, I think, about what I call uniting the right, what lots of people call uniting the right. Let's assume Andy Burnham wins, as the betting odds are suggesting. What do you think Reform, Restore, and indeed the Conservatives do tomorrow to ensure that there is some unification, that the right are not seen to be in civil war, which arguably they are, whereby, depending on when Andy Burnham decides to call an election, could be this year, could be, or it might be 2020.
He's ruled that out, hasn't he, already, that he's not going to do it?
Do we believe that? I'm not sure we do. So what do the right do? What do you think they should do to come together to stop what could be either another Labour victory at a general election, or even worse, from my point of view, a Labour-Green coalition?
Yeah, I think it's difficult when we talk about uniting the right, because what we've seen so far is actually a supreme amount of arrogance from one political party, Reform, that believe that they should get everybody's votes just because they're the up and I don't think democracy should work that way. There's a lot of people that are angry that Restore is standing because it's going to give it to Burnham. I think the results are going to be interesting. I don't know actually if Restore are going to make the difference between Burnham. I do think that he's just going to win it outright. But these are the consequences that we're going to see in Makerfield based off the results. I mean, the results could be that Burnham loses and his career is dead, which, I mean, is not necessarily a bad thing for all of us.
Well, he'll stay as Manchester Mayor.
Yeah, yes, he will technically stay as Manchester Mayor, but if you're losing in a Manchester election when you've basically come to say that I'm going to kick one of our MPs out because I want to become Prime Minister, I'm going to shoehorn myself into a seat in Wigan that I should win, and basically in the knowledge that I'm going to basically give up my mayoralty. He's basically said a big F you to the rest of Manchester, essentially. So yes, he'll stay as Manchester mayor, but after his term, mayor is dead. I mean, but if Burnham does not win this election, his career is dead. I don't think there's any, two ways about it. He's taken a huge gamble, and we'll see if it's going to pay off. But the other result is that Labour win by a bigger margin than what Restore Britain get, and that Reform were further away. So actually the Restore vote has made absolutely no difference, or that Reform lose by the difference of the vote from Restore Britain, which are what the polls are actually suggesting is going to happen, because the polls are saying that they're 5 points behind and that Restore are getting 8. So if that happens, then there has to be a conversation about uniting the right. But I don't think that should alienate that Reform basically say no one else should stand and you should all back us and we can do whatever we want. There has to be some kind of communication here. And I think that's where Reform have gone massively wrong, because they've spent the last sort of year saying, we're going to destroy the Conservative Party, we want to end you as a party, we want to do this, that and the other. And obviously they've done very similar to Rupert Lowe's party.
Or you could argue also the other way around. That's exactly what Restore's mission is to destroy Reform and Nigel Farage.
But they've done that to the Tories. So now Reform, I don't think, can turn around and say, oh, you need to be, like, can you give us all your votes to help us? Like, why is a Conservative want to give you your vote or give you your support when you've basically said that you want to destroy them as a party? I mean, it's not going to happen. And that's the same way with Restore Britain. There's so much toxicity amongst the three parties on the right. I don't think any of them have gone at this at a sensible angle, and none of them have thought through the very real fact of that now you've got 6 parties contesting an election, you're going to have a coalition government. That is just, nobody is going to win outright. I don't believe anyone's going to win outright. So, and I don't think you should have ever believed that someone was going to win outright. So they should have worked with each other better. They should have not.
But how? Because you've got individuals at the top of those parties that intensely dislike each other. It is personal.
Yeah.
It is personal.
But they've made it personal, and they have.
But how do we get to a solution then? So what would you do if you were brought in to advise Nigel Farage and Rupert Lowe, and take this from the perspective of the kind of centre-right, common sense leaning individual, Essex, Kent, Hampshire, wherever they are, that says, look, I'm not interested in the minutiae. I'm really not interested in arguments between Rupert and Nigel and others and Ben Habib. I'm not interested in that. Yeah. What I'm interested in is a country that restores itself to traditional values, that ends up with, from my point of view, some Thatcherite principles, so that we put things back on the straight and narrow, and we don't end up lurching even further to the left, where the welfare state is absolutely overburdened. We are defenceless. We have open door immigration. We end up being back in lockstep with the EU. I mean, these are the things that are happening under Starmer and will happen even more so under Burnham. We all know that. But the average person, they don't care about the argument. They care about the outcome. How do we ensure, those that feel the way perhaps I do and you do, that these hatchets are buried so that we move forward and that this country can get back on its feet again?
Well, I think obviously the most sensible option would be is for all of the parties to look at the places where they're going to win and to contest those seats and not contest in the seats that they can't win. There are places where would only go Conservative and that Reform wouldn't win just because of the demographic, the mindset of people in the country. I'm talking in places like Surrey and other places like that where
Hampshire.
People will just vote Conservative. They just won't vote for Reform. And there are places where people will just never vote Conservative no matter what, but in red wall seats where people like Reform will win. And Restore Britain, I'm not really sure where they lie. I think they're a little
Yarmouth.
I think they're a little bit too far to the right, actually, to join in a coalition between the Conservatives and Reform. I think they believe in things that principally people in Reform and the Conservatives are not going to believe in. I'm not calling them far right, but what I'm saying is that they're a little bit further perhaps than a middle ground that the other two are going to want to concede in.
Yeah.
So I don't think that they'll have too much of a place in the coalition of the right. But the Conservatives and Reform, I would say, should work together, but I don't think it's in a way of them merging their powers. I just think it's the way of being sensible. If we can't win here, so let's sit down.
A kind of confidence and supply type
and I think that would be really good for the country, actually. I wouldn't mind seeing a Reform Conservative coalition, because we have this refreshed outlook from the Reform, this need for change, this want for change. But then if we've got the Conservatives, we've got a bit of competence there.
Maybe it will turn the Conservatives back to being Conservatives again.
Yeah, exactly. So I think Reform will drag the Tories to the right, but it will be done in a way by people that have experience, that know what they're doing, that know how government works, and of course are a little bit more sensible, that if we get any sort of outliers in Reform that want to, do anything radical that's bad for the country, they perhaps will be kept in check. I think it will be a good merger. We've got it's experience versus freshness, a mixture of talent, and it will pull the country back to the right where it needs to be. I don't think we should rule out a coalition.
Very practical and pragmatic from you. Not sure it's going to happen in terms of the personalities involved, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's
if
the biggest
Restore
problem.
poll less than 5 or 6% today, is Restore finished?
I don't think they'll ever be finished. I don't think ego can ever be finished.
But it will surely send a message to Rupert Lowe if that happens. I mean, if they get 15% of the vote, okay, all bets are off.
Yeah.
If Rupert Lowe's party, despite the fact he's had hundreds and hundreds of people up in Makerfield, lots of leaflets, lots of social media, if he polls 5 or 6%, he's done, surely.
I don't know. I think he's got a good argument here in that it's a by-election and people are going to focus on Burnham versus Reform, whereas if it was a national picture, you're going to have less of a concentration on that. I think if it's a national picture, smaller parties actually have a better job than in the by-elections, because by-elections, it is a case of Burnham or not, and people are going to have that in their minds. People tend to vote tactically far more in by-elections than they do in regular elections. So in a regular election, I think he's actually got more of a chance to get a larger vote share. Whether those vote shares translate into seats, I don't think is going to happen.
Do you think they chose the right candidate? And the reason I ask you is because of
I haven't heard of this candidate at all.
Rebecca, this Rebecca Shepherd, I think. Is it Rebecca or Rachel? Sorry, Rebecca Shepherd.
Rebecca Shepherd, but no one's heard of her really doing anything.
And no one's still heard of her. Just watch this.
Someone we didn't get to speak to at the Restore rally earlier was Rebecca Shepherd, the party's Makerfield candidate. We heard that she might be canvassing in town, so we decided to see if we could find her, to ask her some questions and put Robert Kenyon's comments to her. This is what happened.
Hi Rebecca, my name's Peter, I'm a reporter at Telegraph. I was talking to Rupert earlier, not one question. Rebecca, we just get one question, Rebecca, is that all right? Are you sure? Are you sure?
So can Rebecca do one interview or not? We said that.
Go on, Rupert, just one.
Yeah, you saw that right. That is Rebecca Shepherd, the Restore Britain candidate. And I'm not saying this to be political because I happen to be Reform. As I will continue to say sitting in this seat, I'm not here as a Reform advocate or apologist. I'm here as Russell Quirk on UK Live. So I kind of take my Reform hat off. But you have to say this is news, right? You've got there the Restore Britain candidate, Rebecca Shepherd, who is in the street with Rupert Lowe, the leader of the party, and seemingly Rupert Lowe's chief of staff. And Sophie, the chief of staff overrules Rupert Lowe and refuses to let the candidate speak to the press not 24 hours before polling day. What is going on there? Is she the wrong candidate?
Well, she hasn't spoken to the press at all, and
she did once, and it didn't go well.
Barely. If we focus on it, it's the Telegraph. I mean, they're not going to. It's not the Guardian, right? They're not going to be as hostile as the Guardian. So, why don't you trust your candidate? If she gets elected to Parliament, she's going to have to speak to the media because she's going to be basically your only MP other than Rupert. But I think the dynamic that you pointed out is actually really important because a lot of people that support Rupert support him from Twitter. He's got an enormous Twitter following, but people need to understand that that's actually not him. From what we've heard, Rupert doesn't run his social media at all. It's somebody else.
Hang on.
If it's
breaking
not him,
news from Sophie. This is a revelation. So the personality that is Rupert Lowe on social media, by the way, which he earns a lot of money
is
from.
Apparently not him.
It's not him posting.
So if it's not him posting, all of the things that people are supporting, they're not actually supporting Rupert Lowe. They're supporting whoever this person is that is controlling his social media.
Could be an intern.
There is reports that it is this Alistair Harrison, who is I believe, is one of his chief of staff.
Is that the chap that was there?
Believe so. So Alistair Harrison is... So essentially people are supporting Alistair Harrison as opposed to Rupert Lowe. It's not actually Rupert Lowe. And some of the interviews that we've actually seen from Rupert Lowe, he's actually far more tamer than what his social media actually is because he doesn't run his social media from what is being alleged online. I mean,
So hang on, who's running Restore Britain? Because Rupert Lowe...
Alistair Harrison apparently is running Restore
Rupert
Britain.
Lowe doesn't seem to have the say in what his candidate says
doesn't.
From that clip. He's not the voice of social media, which is how that party has grown.
Yeah.
Obviously, look, he's done stuff in his own right, whether it be in Parliament, whether it be on social media and videos. He does a lot of interviews, in fairness. Obviously, he famously has criticised the likes of GB News and others for banning him, but I don't believe that to be true. But what we're saying is that the very foundations of his popularity might not be because of him at all, it's some 25-year-old something political wannabe that is effectively the person that is pulling the strings.
Yeah, and good for the 25-year-old political wannabe because clearly they've got a massive amount of popularity, but it is not Rupert Lowe. It is not this Restore Party MP, from what I've heard. And I think that, that is a little bit misleading in a way. I think
a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, quite misleading.
Hang on, I'll tell you how misleading it is. It's like Madonna doing a gig and somebody else actually singing the words.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
So it's basically what I think's happened is a bunch of young lads have not been up the hierarchy in reform, have decided to create their own party. I mean, they're looking like they're doing a pretty good job of it, but it's not actually, from what we hear, is Rupert Lowe. From the interviews I've seen Rupert Lowe do, he's very sensible, he's very right-wing, but he's both sensible and he's right-wing, and that is not Restore Britain. He is far more sensible than what Restore Britain are coming out with. He is far, far more sensible and less soundbitey and far more intelligent than perhaps what his tweets are being. But obviously they're used to make a lot of money, and they're not actually written by him.
Okay, you heard it here first. I'm sure we will clip that later, Sophie, because that's very, very interesting. It's a bombshell, as Mr. Jeremy Clarkson
I don't know how
say.
you haven't heard of this. This has been all over social media.
I don't get out much.
I'm
I'm too busy watching football matches, as you know, because I am now a proper football
avid
pundit.
Football fan.
No, I'm an expert. I'm an expert. Can we just turn our attention then to Labour?
Yep.
So tomorrow, let's say we wake up, Andy Burnham's won. He has said, well, first of all, and this is hilarious, Keir Starmer has said that he intends to give Andy Burnham a prominent job in the cabinet. I mean, that is deluded beyond delusion.
I think Andy Burnham will be taking his job.
He said no, funnily enough, because he wants his job, and I suspect he will get it. So you've got Starmer on the one hand saying, effectively, I'm going to dig my heels in, hang on by my fingernails. I mean, you've seen those memes on social media with Keir Starmer being pulled out of Downing Street like this, with his nails dragging down the walls of Downing Street.
Never dignified.
No, never dignified. But Starmer thinks it's his God-given Messiah-like right to be in Downing Street, and he should not be prized out unless, I guess, he has to be taken out in a coffin, perhaps. You know, my word's not his. So you've got this dynamic where Burnham has said he won't challenge immediately. He also is not encouraging the likes of Ed Miliband, Yvette Cooper and other frontbenchers from the Labour Party to resign immediately, although they might do that tomorrow, as soon as Andy Burnham...
I think it's just a case of making sure he's got the numbers before he does anything.
Yeah, but do we think, though, I mean, we talk about the right uniting, but we're going to end up with a semblance of Labour Party civil war, aren't we?
I don't know if we're going to have too much of a civil war. I think it's going to be Starmer versus the Labour Party. So I think it'll be quite interesting with Burnham. He's come in there. I don't think he can't challenge for PM, because the only reason why he's come back into Parliament is to become PM.
Well, he only needs 80 members of the parliamentary party
I think
to allow him to challenge. So it's going to happen. That then opens the door to Angela Rayner, who's just had a makeover, by the way, we noticed, so she's definitely up to something.
Yeah.
And Wes Streeting, of course, is also basically saying that, yes, I will challenge him.
Yeah, I don't know. I think if Burnham is going to be a clear winner, which I suspect he will be, because I don't think, unless he knew that he was going to be, that he would have come back into Parliament in the first place, because this is all about Burnham and no one else. Burnham doesn't care about the country, he cares about himself, but he's only going to do it if he knows that he's going to win. I think we're going to see some extraordinary, like, Burnham sucking up, like, ultimate teacher's pet kind of behaviour from some Labour MPs. It's going to be deeply insufferable because they all want a job.
Hang on, Labour people fawning over each other in a cringeable way.
Yeah, that's going to happen. It's going to be so awful.
My skin is squirming as we speak. So do you think it will be a Burnham coronation? I
think so. It'll be a Burnham coronation. I think they'll all be trying to pip each other for the top job. I think that's where the civil war is going to come, between the sort of second-rate MPs all trying to get cabinet jobs.
They're all second-rate MPs, I think, aren't they? So what happens? So Yvette Cooper goes, presumably Lucy Powell goes, David Lammy, please, can he go? We've got a clip about him later on, actually. I don't want to spoil it. We'll come back to that. So we think that the Labour current hierarchy go. Angela Rayner comes back inevitably, presumably as something very, very powerful, Foreign Secretary, because she likes a bit of Ibiza after all, doesn't she? So maybe that would suit her. Ed Miliband as Chancellor sounds fantastic, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think that's coming.
Do we?
I think that might be coming.
Oh, how scary is that?
No, I mean, it's not great, because considering he doesn't care about the economy at all with his whole net zero thing. But I think...
But he'll double down on net zero if he's Chancellor.
I think with Burnham, if you look back at what the Tories got wrong, which was a lot, and you think, okay, well, if I'm going to be a new leader, perhaps you should be a new leader with a brand new cabinet of people that we've never heard of before, and not the recyclables of Angela Rayner and David Lammy. I think that's how I would go about it. If I was Burnham coming in, I'd sack a lot of them and I'd get in some brand new people. It's not going to make people happy, but it's the only way to really renew a premiership, because you can change the man at the top, but if the rest of them are all the same, then you haven't achieved any change, have you? So I think that's probably what I would do.
He's not going to have much in the way of choice, though, when it comes to what most of us would agree is important, which is people that have actually had jobs outside of politics, careers outside of politics, people that have been in, I don't know, industry and education and community, sport, whatever. I don't think he's going to be spoilt, because I don't think there are many in the Parliamentary Labour Party that have had that life experience. This is the problem. So I don't know who he's going to choose, frankly.
It's quite extraordinary that you've got an absolutely record-breaking number of MPs and absolutely no one to choose from.
Yes, which is why Burnham's had to come back in the first place.
It's unbelievable that you have so many MPs and not a single one of them is talented enough to even challenge for a junior ministerial job in a good way. I mean, how have you got such a broad number of MPs to choose from, but you've actually got nothing? It's like, it's like as a woman, when I go into my wardrobe, I'm like, I've got nothing to wear, when I quite literally have like a wardrobe full of clothes. You sound like my wife. But I still have nothing to wear. This is essentially what is going on in politics. They've got loads of MPs and nobody good enough to actually
Sophie, I do
the
the same. When I open my garage and I've got a couple of cars there, I've just got nothing to drive.
Yeah,
and then I walk
like
back into my wife and say, I need to buy another car. Can we talk about question time?
Yep.
The revelations from Zia Youssef. I think we've got a clip which we will play you. Let's get Elena involved here. It is, I think, number 8. Can we just watch this for a second?
So the man in the white shirt, now I know you came over on a small boat. Am I right about that?
Yeah.
What's your response to what you're hearing? Because obviously everyone is talking about people like you.
Well, let me say something first. I just want to clear that leaving the convention doesn't just affect the migrants. It would give ordinary people one less court, ordinary people one less court to protect their rights, even for weekend checks.
Okay, so look, that's the revelation. And forget who's called this out for a second. The point in raising this with you, Sophie, is the BBC.
Yeah.
So the BBC have been much criticised, understandably and justifiably over years, but particularly in recent months, whether it's having presenters that are wrong-uns, whether it's doctoring President of the United States speeches, and generally being quite biased. We had this situation on Question Time. Question Time, of course, has become something that lots and lots of people criticise for being of the left, for being manipulated, tweaked by left-leaning BBC producers, whereby the whole thing is kind of stilted towards a left-wing narrative, and where someone on the left on the panel says something, everyone gives them a round of applause. Someone on the right says something, and everyone boos. I mean, a completely biased and selective audience in that respect. And of course, probably one of the most famous Question Times in recent months has been that particular one there, where you had a number of asylum seekers, now granted asylum in the audience. They were called out by many, including Zia Youssef and others, Conservatives and others, that this was a kind of manipulated audience. But it was denied. The BBC denied it. It was random, apparently, that they had a couple of people in the audience that were asylum seekers, now granted asylum. And it was alleged at the time that perhaps a certain charity that is a refugee promoting charity might have instigated the inclusion of those individuals in the Question Time audience and indeed coached them. You remember perhaps one of the question askers in the audience had an earpiece. It's all very, very suspicious. It now turns out in the newspapers today that they were plants and that the audience was manipulated. That tells us everything. If we didn't know already, Sophie, that the BBC are biased, the BBC lie, fib, and deceive us. They are genuinely of the left. That is very, very clear. Time to defund the BBC?
I mean, I think, regardless of whether they were left wing, right wing, or whatever, I think we should defund the BBC. I think that channels like ours and everyone should be judged on their merit, and you make money through your audience. You shouldn't be. No one should be forced to pay for something and watch something that is rubbish. We should be subject to market forces, just like every single other channel is in this country, and that potentially would help influence our output in any which way. So I think whether they were right-leaning or left-leaning, they should have been defunded anyway. I don't think that we should be having a taxpayer-funded broadcaster. I don't think it's good for democracy. I don't think it's fair for the other channels. I don't think it's good for fair competition. But, I mean, it was obvious that they were plants. I mean, we just saw that video. The guy was literally looking at his phone and couldn't even read the words that he was trying to say. He didn't know what the words were.
Well, he's been given that again.
So there's no way that he would know about the ECHR rules when the guy can barely string a sentence together in English. I mean, it's just absurd to suggest that the public wouldn't know.
Planted to elicit some sympathy for the asylum seeker cause.
Yeah. For sure. Absolutely. But why present it? The problem is that if they'd have said that we've gotten someone in from this background to ask you this question, and they were very open about it, that they wanted this perspective to be heard, as all broadcasters should do. I mean, I have no problem with them putting these challenges to politicians. It's pretending that it's some sort of average Joe member of the public that has just sort of wandered into question time, and it wasn't manipulated to be that way. I've got no problem if people ask left-wing questions. I mean, that's the whole point of a broadcaster is to cover both views, and in order to do that, they're going to have to get people of these views to ask these questions. I mean, they do it for me all the time. Sometimes they want me to come on and speak to something from a young person's perspective. Obviously, I'm planted to be there from a young person's perspective, and they know what I'm going to say ahead of time. They do know what people are going to say ahead of time in these audiences. You have to submit the questions in advance, A, and B, you have to have, they phone you up and ask you a load of questions when you apply for the audience because they want to set it up in a particular way. They've got every single right to do that, but don't pretend that these guys have just wandered into the studio as migrants and have somehow given us an extremely in-depth analysis about the ECHR effects on migration when the guy can't even speak English.
Well, and to give the impression by way of that manipulation that this is the kind of, the whole standard public mood is to be pro-asylum seeker. That's what they're trying to do. But what's worse is that the BBC denied. But the BBC denied.
Yeah,
the BBC denied that this was manipulation. How can we trust question time ever again? Particularly, I mean, look, they're already losing audience left, right, and centre. It's literally a shadow of what it was 15 or 20 years ago. I mean, it needs to be canned. I mean, frankly, if they want to bring asylum seekers on to advance their argument, that's fine.
Yeah,
but do it openly and properly.
Yeah, I think the problem is that they tried to pretend that the public wouldn't notice, and when the public obviously noticed because a guy is trying to tell you about the intricacies of the ECHR that doesn't even know how to say basic words in English, and when the public have obviously caught on, which they were always going to do, then try and deny it. I think that's the problem. I mean, they just have a bold-faced disrespect for the British public and think that we're utterly stupid.
Yeah.
But I think that is the BBC.
And I wouldn't mind though, Sophie.
The British public is stupid because they think they're better than us.
I wouldn't mind if we weren't paying for it as a mandatory
I think
thing.
I would mind even if we were paying for it.
It reminds me of a certain conversation. Do you remember this, everybody? When I was on a certain other alternative channel, and I handed over to Vanessa Feltz, and we had rather a large ding-dong about the BBC because I said, look, it's basically mandatory viewing and it's a tax by way of the licence fee in order to watch it. But even if I don't watch it, I still have to pay the tax. It's a kind of entertainment tax, even if I'm not entertained.
People often cry
and we had a
about the
huge
BBC.
ding-dong, and it didn't go very well in the end. And let's just say
They
Vanessa.
cry, so if the BBC doesn't have a licence fee, the BBC wasn't survive. Well, then it shouldn't survive.
Yeah,
if the BBC isn't good enough to survive on its own 2 feet because a load of people watch it, because it produces good quality output, and because it is a station that people want,
Yeah. Well, maybe
just like every other broadcaster.
Maybe it should just do the news. Hold that thought for a second, because we're going to do our own version of the news with Edward Hughes.